Today I am stress testing the EZCool 350 watt power supply. This power supply should handle 25 amps on 12 volt rails. For the first test, power supply will be loaded with 28.6 amps on the 12 volt rail. 12 volt rail voltage is unacceptably low, as we can see on the right side of the screen. In addition, power supply's power consumption is increasing rapidly, pointing to a promptly approaching failure. As the power consumption increases by 57 volt amps, inevitable failure occurs as the overload protection activates. For the next test, power supply will be loaded with 27.4 amps. That is 1.2 amps less than during the previous test. Interestingly, 12 volt rail voltage is now within acceptable range, and therefore total power output exceeds that of the previous test. Unfortunately, failure occurs 10 seconds after introducing the load, which can be explained by consecutive testing approach, as the power supply cannot cool off between tests. For the third test, power supply will experience a load of 24 amps, which is in allowable range. The overload protection kicks in after 45 seconds, and I consider this power supply unable to meet its specifications. Now we will see what kind of load does this power supply handle. 22.2 amps doesn't raise hopes, because power consumption starts to increase. Failure occurs after 48 seconds. For our fifth test, 12 volt rail will be loaded with 19 amps. Input is stable, output is well within specs, and the power supply does not fail. After half an hour, I increased the load to 22.2 amps to see if it's really beyond this power supply's reach. It was, and failure occurred after about 3 minutes. During this time, input increased by a whopping 73 volt amps, pointing to an overload. For the last test, I confirmed that the power supply handles 19 amps on the 12 volt rail easily, as power usage and 12 volt rail voltages are stable. In conclusion, positive was that failures were intermittent, and I was unable to destroy this power supply by overloading. In comparison, 300 watt cogen power supply experienced a short circuit after 15 minutes of 21.5 amps on the 12 volt rail. 350 watt Fortron power supply failed permanently after 3 minutes of 35 amps on 12 volt rail.